cause I'm on one.
You know, we have ones that's a Rastafari, live in the city, Kingston City, Manhattan, like you know, we live amongst our universal brothers and sisters, and Rastafari is for each and every one. So it's not a...
Swinging for the fences for the home run.
Habesha, Begusana gets to Ethiopia. Habesha, Mr. Shomaya, the Farambasa. Habesha.
Even further beyond into the universe, but I've got to make it to first.
Urgent message from the 12 seers of Mount Zion. They said the black nation will be blessed by God in these days. Circle the mountain and go home. Shabbat, Mount Zion calling me.
All right, and for those who may have been following this storyline for quite some time now, and that's mostly dealing with the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam project, and a lot of the talks and issues that have come up from the neighboring countries there in the Nile, and dealing with, you know, of course, drought and prolonged drought in that sense, and environmental services that pretty much make up the ecosystem from the Nile, and that's stretching from its innermost portion all the way up until the Nile Delta, where Egypt, of course, is located, emptying into the Mediterranean. There's an entire ecosystem that has been shaken, and also political issues that continue to come up within that range. But here, one should do a little bit more research here, and we would like to bring out a lot of the points that have really come into play. There were about 6 points that were very crucial and brought up as this initial meeting here that was brokered by the United States, and the meeting was also held here in Washington, D.C., amongst the 3 countries, amongst many delegates. But here, coming from Bloomberg, one should check out this report as well as the joint statement made from not only the 3 nations involved, which would be Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia, but also from the World Bank as well as the United States government. Here, the Treasury also solicited a report and a statement given out outlining these points which I mentioned, and also will leave a bit of an outline for ones to research for themselves so they can actually find out exactly what was talked about within, you know, these negotiations and these agreements. But here, coming from Bloomberg in the politics section, entitled Nile Powers Set End of Month to Finalize U.S.-Backed Deal on Dam. This presented here on January 15, 2020 from a Salesha Mohsin, and reads on as such. Egyptian and Ethiopian officials agreed to finalize by the end of January a pact on the filing and operations of a giant dam Ethiopia is building on the Nile, as the U.S. tries to broker an end to a dispute between 2 of its key African allies. The countries and mutual neighbor Sudan announced plans for the January 28th and 29th meetings on Wednesday after talks in Washington this week observed by the U.S. Treasury and World Bank. They'd previously set a deadline of January 15th, 2020 to resolve the dispute over the use of crucial fresh water by the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or the GERD, which is set to be Africa's biggest hydropower project when completed. Egyptian, Ethiopian, and Sudanese officials reconfirmed that the dam on the Blue Nile will be filled in stages and in an adaptive and cooperative manner, quote unquote, according to a joint statement from the African countries, U.S. and World Bank. It didn't give a significant due details to the project. U.S. President Donald Trump met the foreign water resources ministers of Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan earlier this week, where he reaffirmed Washington's support for a cooperative, sustainable, and mutually beneficial agreement among the parties, according to the White House. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin intervened late last year in the long-running dispute over the dam, where the most pressing current issue is how to fill the reservoir. a process crucial to ensuring a reliable flow to Egypt, which depends on the Nile for almost all of its fresh water. Ethiopia wants the filling to happen as quickly as possible to produce power in the central, which is central to its economic plans. Egypt is urging parties to respect a 1959 pact on water allowances, which Ethiopia says should be reworked because it dates to the colonial era. Construction on the dam is 5 years behind schedule and probably well over its original 3.4 billion euro or $3.8 billion budget. When the government ran short on funding, ordinary Ethiopians were tapped for donations and civil servants donated parts of their salaries. Ethiopia's government recently said the filling will begin in July of 2020. So again, we would I press for ones to actually continue doing some research on this particular subject matter. We can even date even the idea and the initial starting of the project of a dam there on the Nile to, of course, Haile Selassie's era, who, of course, presented that on much of the Ethiopian birr, which is the currency even from, such times during his 55-year reign. And, of course, a lot of things continue to come up in conversation, and a lot of disputes continue to linger across certain eras. Even so, as mentioned here, one can see that a lot of what Egypt intends to present as far as the conversation, a lot of the topics, kind of stemmed from the colonial era on up into the here and now. Ethiopia, of course, looking to become more of a geopolitical player, of course, in the Horn of Africa, which it has been for quite some time, and looks to continue that seemingly. Sudan, of course, going through many protests and a total upheaval of its long-standing president, Omar al-Bashir, and of course, with the new incoming president and the new incoming regime and administration, they look to take themselves in a different direction, which they had been going from such a time politically. So a lot of these things into play, along with a lot of these environmental issues still lingering in much of the air. It will continue to bring out much more information, and hopefully we'll be able to report on that and keep ones abreast of what is going on this specific subject as well as many others.